My husband is a transmigrator who has been tasked by the system to court the second female lead. However, he fell in love with me, the female protagonist, at first sight. Every time he was attracted to me, he would receive an electric shock. He has already been shocked 999 times. Later, I was kidnapped by a terrorist organization. I was electrocuted, imprisoned in a water dungeon, and had long nails driven into my body. In a moment of despair, I remembered the method Hugh had taught me to connect to his system. After connecting, I heard a conversation between Hugh and the system. Host: how could you make a deal with that terrorist organization yourself and let them torture Evelyn like this? Isn't she your wife? My husband's voice was cold. This experience was originally supposed to happen to Linda. In order to save her, I had no other choice. Evelyn is the female protagonist. She has the protagonist's halo and won't die no matter what. After this is over, I'll have enough points to stay in this world, and I'll do everything I can to compensate her. My heart ached as if it were being wrung. When those men pounced on me, I simply gave up resistance. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Damn, this woman is really something. At the man's signal, the small room was immediately filled with people. Long nails were driven into my limbs. Even the slightest movement caused excruciating pain, not to mention such strenuous activity. The bed kept shaking, and the stench of the men filled my nostrils. Amidst the heavy gasps, I heard Hugh's voice again. How many are there already? The system's voice trembled. The eighth one. Host: Evelyn's condition is a bit abnormal. Why don't we make them stop? No way. Hugh's cold voice exploded in my ears. In the book, Linda was violated 10 times. Since Evelyn is going to take Linda's place, not a single one of these violations can be missing. When I heard these words, I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave. 2 months ago, a terrible virus broke out in a Middle Eastern country. The infection spread rapidly, and most of the infected people couldn't survive more than 3 days. As an infectious disease expert, I was sent there for medical assistance. When I arrived, Hugh said he was worried about my safety and insisted on coming with me. I actually thought he was concerned about me. Now I realize that he had planned all of this 2 months ago. Another man entered, and I numbly endured everything. Suddenly, my abdomen tightened, and a huge wave of pain swept over my nerves again. Before I could figure out what was happening, I heard the man on top of me curse. Damn it. What is this? Another man peeked over. It's a baby. This is such a terrible thing. She's actually pregnant. The room fell silent instantly, and the man on me backed away. The unfamiliar language told me that everyone was shocked by the baby. Even a beast wouldn't want to continue with this after seeing this scene. When I heard that the baby had been lost, my mind went blank, and tears streamed down my face involuntarily. As a doctor, how could I not have known about the existence of this child? Hugh and I had been married for 3 years, and he had been intimate with me every night. Whenever I was too tired and didn't want to, he would always hug my waist and act coquettishly. He told me that in his original world, he was an orphan, and his greatest wish was to marry a wife and have a child. Now that he had married me, this was his only remaining wish. In order to have a child for him, I worked hard to get my body in the best condition. Finally, I got pregnant with his child 3 months ago. But before I could tell him, I was captured by terrorists and taken to their base camp. Host: it's already the 9th man, and no one is willing to touch Evelyn anymore. The system's voice interrupted my thoughts, and I realized that the connection hadn't been broken. Hugh's anxious voice sounded. Why? At this moment, even the mechanical voice of the system carried a hint of pity. Because when the 9th man was with her, Evelyn, don't tell me the details of her violation. I can't stand it. Hugh raged. The system told him. All I can say is that Evelyn's condition is very bad now. Hugh fell silent. Just when I thought he would feel sorry for me, his voice cut into my heart again. Since no one is willing to touch her, then find a dog. The system gasped. Host: what you're doing is too much. Evelyn has done nothing wrong. Why should she suffer this torture for Linda? Do you think it's just her who's suffering? My heart is almost breaking with pain. Hugh said, his voice full of suffering. But what can I do? If Linda doesn't survive, I'll also leave this world. This is the last time. After she endures one more violation and someone injects her with the virus, I can go and save her. Hugh's voice was as soft as the wind and faded away in my mind. The door opened, and when I saw that strong dog, I closed my eyes in despair. Everything happened just as Hugh had arranged. After the weight on my body disappeared, the room finally became quiet. I forced myself up and saw the tiny embryo on the ground. I crawled over and held it in my arms. My child. This was my child. Grief overwhelmed me, and I was in excruciating pain. At this moment, someone came in with a syringe. The needle pierced my skin, and the moment the liquid flowed into my veins, the coldness made me shiver. Having dealt with this virus for 3 months, I naturally knew what was being injected into me. This was the original virus strain of the current epidemic, and it might even have been extracted from a dead person. With this concentration of the virus, if there was no specific medicine within 24 hours, I would die. Fortunately, I had already developed the specific medicine, but it hadn't been released yet. I had always thought that the terrorists targeted me because of the specific medicine. Now it seemed that wasn't the reason at all. All of this was because of Hugh's actions for Linda. He had always said that he came to this world to save Linda, and only if Linda survived could he stay. So after marrying me, he would always help Linda, trying to change her fate. I had even quarreled with him about this. Every time, Hugh would tell me helplessly, "Evelyn, I really have no feelings for her. I'm doing this for our future." But I never expected that he would go so far this time and make me suffer in Linda's place. My heart was aching to the point of numbness. Just after the virus was injected, the door was kicked open violently. The next second, I was tightly hugged. The scent of Hugh filled my nostrils. The familiar scent that used to make me feel at ease now filled me with extreme fear. He was shaking all over. "Evelyn, I'm here. I'm sorry for making you suffer so much." I let him hold me, staring fiercely ahead with hatred filling my heart. It took me a long time to make my voice sound normal. "Hugh, don't you have the system? Why did it take you so long to find me?" Hugh's body froze. "There was a problem with the system. It's all my fault. Evelyn, don't worry. I don't think you're dirty, and I'll cure you. Let's go to the hospital now." He draped his suit over me, picked me up, and ordered in a low voice, "Leave no one alive." I was taken to the hospital. When my colleagues heard about this, they all came to see me, even though they were used to seeing all kinds of injuries. The colleague who operated on me still gasped when he saw my condition. They removed more than 20 long nails from my body. After the operation, I was taken to the ward. I'm not sensitive to anesthesia, so I didn't fall asleep. But I didn't want to see Hugh either, so I closed my eyes. After hearing my colleagues' retelling, Hugh was extremely sad. He stroked my face and said, "Evelyn, I'll never let you suffer like this again." If I had heard such words before, I would have been moved to tears. Now, I just felt disgusted. Not long after, the door of the ward opened. A voice that I least wanted to hear sounded, "Hugh, I'm here." Linda had arrived. "Inject the medicine into her now. I've already prepared the plane. You can return to your home country in 2 hours." Linda nodded and grabbed his hand. "Hugh, come back with me." Hugh said, "I want to stay here and take care of Evelyn." Her delicate voice sounded, "But I'm scared. It's really chaotic here." After thinking for a while, Hugh agreed. Hugh always told me that he had no feelings for Linda, but he had never refused any of Linda's requests, and he was always gentle when he spoke to her. I used to comfort myself with the excuse that he was just fulfilling his mission. Now, I can't deceive myself anymore. Hugh said he was going out to arrange for a private plane, leaving Linda and me in the room. She walked to my bedside and poked my surgical wound hard. "Stop pretending." I opened my eyes and looked at her. Linda sneered, "Evelyn, look at yourself now. I heard that you were violated by 10 men. How can you still have the nerve to live in this world?" I sneered, "Even so, Hugh won't divorce me and marry you." I knew she liked Hugh and even wanted to marry him. Sure enough, upon hearing these words, Linda's expression changed, and her voice suddenly rose. "So what? He already dislikes you. Do you know what he asked me to do? He knows that you're not sensitive to ordinary anesthesia. So he specifically asked me to inject you with a special sleeping pill. That way, you'll fall into a deep sleep. And he can claim that the specific medicine developed by your team was actually developed by our team." "What?" I was shocked. This specific medicine was developed by our team of 20 people who worked day and night for 2 months. If it were to be made public, it would definitely shock the world. There were many unknown doctors in our team, and many of them were counting on this medicine as a stepping stone to turn their lives around. How dare you give this credit to Linda? How dare you steal our achievement? I tried to struggle to get up, but Linda was too lazy to continue the conversation with me. She took out the medicine from her bag and injected it into my body directly. Evelyn, from today on, everything you have is mine, including Hugh. However, the medicine Linda brought didn't have the effect she wanted, because I was awakened by the heat less than an hour later. When I opened my eyes, Hugh and Linda were gone. My colleague beside me told me that Hugh had gone to the airport. I nodded and smiled when I saw his fully armed appearance. What are you dressed like? Is the virus spreading again? My colleague bit his lip and still asked me. Evelyn, we just got the result. It seems that you're infected with the virus. I already knew this. I had thought that I would be injected with the specific medicine as soon as I was admitted to the hospital. It seemed that Hugh had forgotten about it. I nodded. I was injected with the virus by the gangsters. It's still not too late for you to give me the specific medicine now. The other person's expression changed, and he told me, there's no specific medicine in the hospital anymore. After all the patients here were cured, all the specific medicine was packed and sent to another place. There wasn't a single dose left here now. Upon hearing this news, my mind went blank. Without the specific medicine, I was likely to die. Fortunately, someone found out that there was a plane flying to that city an hour later. I was carried to a car by several people. When we arrived at the airport, after hearing about my situation, the airport refused to board me, saying that they couldn't take the responsibility. In a moment of desperation, my colleagues saw Hugh. They knew that Hugh had a private plane and that he usually took this plane to come and see me. They ran over, explained my situation, and asked Hugh to send me to the neighboring city to get the specific medicine first. Unexpectedly, Hugh just glanced at me. I'm going to send Linda back to her home country now. I don't have time to send her. My colleagues were taken aback by the refusal. But Evelyn's illness is really serious. If she doesn't get the specific medicine, she will definitely die. She's your wife. Hugh frowned. Stop acting. I just asked Linda to inject her with the specific medicine. Then he looked at me over the crowd. Evelyn, I know you're jealous again. Today is different. I don't have time to coax you. I'll come back to you after sending Linda back to her home country. Wait for me. After saying that, he took Linda and walked towards the plane. Looking at his resolute back, my heart ached as if it were being stabbed. I knew he must have misunderstood something. But this time I really wasn't being jealous. I was really going to die. My will to live made me call his name. Hugh. He turned around. I cried. Please, send me to that city first. I want to live. I don't want to die. In the face of my plea, a hint of pity flashed in Hugh's eyes. He took 2 steps towards me involuntarily. Suddenly, Linda let out a scream. When we looked back, she had fainted on the ground. Hugh's body moved before his mind could react. By the time he realized it, he had already picked up Linda and boarded the plane. All he left me with was a sentence. Evelyn, you won't die. I'll definitely come back. I don't want you to come back. I want to survive on my own. I want to live. The plane took off right in front of my eyes, which also meant that I had completely lost all hope of survival. The image of him holding Linda and running onto the plane kept replaying in my mind, and this feeling was stuck in my chest. As time passed, I found it hard to breathe. To get some air, I opened my mouth wide. It took a great deal of effort for me to expel that stuffy feeling. My colleagues let out a scream. Blood. So much blood. They laid me down on the spot and started to resuscitate me. However, without the specific medicine, even if I was saved at the airport, I wouldn't make it at the hospital either. Before I died, I gave my colleague Mary the remains of the child I had collected and a recording. I told her earnestly, please give this to Hugh for me. At the same time, a notification rang in Hugh's mind. The female protagonist of the current world has been changed to Linda. Upon hearing this notification, Hugh opened his eyes abruptly. At this moment, he was accompanying Linda, waiting for the press conference to start. An hour ago, Linda had announced that her team had developed the specific medicine. Once the news was released, It caused a sensation around the world. I heard him asking the system, "What's going on?" The system told him in a flustered manner, "Host, it's not good. The original female protagonist is dead. In order to maintain the stability of this world, Linda has been made the female protagonist." "Who did you say is dead?" In his excitement, Hugh made a sound. Everyone around looked over, and Linda also quickly asked him, "Hugh, what's wrong?" But Hugh didn't even spare her a glance and got up to leave. Linda's hand hung in midair, feeling extremely embarrassed. When he got to a place where there was no one around, Hugh finally revealed his emotions. His pupils shrank slightly, and his whole body was shaking. "It's impossible. How could Evelyn die? Isn't she the female protagonist of this world? Doesn't she have the protagonist's halo? How could she die?" The system obviously didn't understand the current situation either. "The information I have now is that the original female protagonist is dead. I need to ask the main system to figure out exactly what happened. The most important thing for you now is to calm down. It's best to go to Evelyn's place." Yes. I'll go find Evelyn right now." Hugh took out his phone and contacted a private plane, and then ran towards the door. Just as he reached the door, Linda ran out and stopped him. "Hugh, where are you going? The reporters are waiting up ahead. Come with me. I'm nervous in this kind of situation." According to the schedule, it was already time for the press conference. Everyone knew that as long as Linda acted coquettishly with him, Hugh would agree without hesitation. But in full view of the public, Hugh didn't give Linda any face. He pushed her away roughly and cursed, "Get lost." Then he left without hesitation. All that was left was Linda with a resentful expression and the people behind her whispering and pointing. On the way, Hugh was extremely anxious. According to the regulations, my body needed to be disinfected all over and then cremated, and then transported to a professional place for deep burial. It could be said to be a complete destruction of the body. When Hugh arrived, the colleagues who had dealt with my body had just come back. When they saw him, everyone was stunned. Hugh rushed up and asked them, "Where's Evelyn?" Mary told him with red eyes, "She's dead." Upon hearing these two words, Hugh's body froze. He took 2 steps back continuously, and his voice was filled with horror. "How is that possible? Evelyn won't die. You must be lying to me. This is a trick between you and her. Where is she? Where on earth is she?" He was angry and hysterical. Mary watched him go crazy and couldn't bear it anymore. "Why wouldn't she die? Didn't you ask those people to kidnap her and inject her with the original virus strain?" Hugh's face turned pale in an instant, and he said in disbelief, "How do you know about this?" "Not only do I know, but everyone knows now." Mary's voice was full of accusation. "Hugh, I always thought you really liked Evelyn. I didn't expect you to be such a scumbag. For Linda, you actually made such a deal with the terrorists. You sent Evelyn to that kind of place, watched her be tortured, and then gave all the hard work of all of us to Linda. Do you know that Evelyn was pregnant with your child? She saved so many people infected with the virus. But in the end, she died because she was infected with the virus herself. Don't you think it's ridiculous?" Hugh was completely stunned. His voice was hoarse. "How could she die from the virus infection? I clearly asked Linda to inject her with the specific medicine. You'll know the specific reason when you listen to this." Mary gave him the recording I had left behind. That recording was my accusation of Hugh's actions and the conversation between him and Linda. I told Mary to give one copy to Hugh and the other to the domestic judicial authorities. We had worked so hard for so long, and I didn't want all our efforts to really benefit Linda. As he listened to the voices in the recording, Hugh's face turned pale. He couldn't believe that Linda hadn't injected me with the specific medicine at all, but a sleeping pill instead. No. How could this be? At this moment, he was like a child who had lost his beloved toy, crying loudly. "This isn't true. This must be a forgery by you guys. Whether it's a forgery or not, you'll know the result soon." Mary's face was cold. "Hugh, you and Linda will be punished soon." Hugh slumped to the ground, and all the color drained from his face. After a moment, he stared at Mary with red eyes and asked, "Where's the body?" "What? Evelyn's body?" Hugh let out a crazy growl. "Give her to me. It's already been dealt with." Mary sneered and took out a bottle from her bag. "Oh, you can have this." When he saw what was in the bottle, Hugh was shocked again. "What is this?" "Your child. Dr. when found out she was pregnant before she was captured by the terrorists. She always told us that you liked children the most. And once the specific medicine was announced, she could share this good news with you. Hugh hugged his head with both hands. Looking at the unformed child, he let out a low roar. I understand that the more he had looked forward to this child before, the more painful he was now. Mary asked him, Hugh, when you asked those people to capture Evelyn, did you ever think that this would kill your wife and child? After asking him these soul-searching questions, Mary went back to the hospital. The colleagues behind her walked back one by one, and every look they gave Hugh was filled with hatred. At the same time, Hugh's system went online again and told him, Host, I've found out. Evelyn's death was because of Linda. The reason Linda became the female protagonist is that you gave all the things that belonged to the female protagonist to her. So she became the female protagonist. Oh, by the way, when I was investigating this matter, I also found out that Evelyn's consciousness once entered my space. She might have wanted to ask you for help at that time, but she heard your conversation. What? Hugh couldn't even shout at this moment. His voice was extremely hoarse, and his former elegance was completely gone. He couldn't face all of this. He thought he had done everything perfectly and that this matter wouldn't be discovered. But he had forgotten that he had taught me how to connect to his system. At that time, he said that as long as I connected to it, no matter where he was, he would definitely appear by my side within 3 minutes. Hugh broke his promise. Not only did he not save me, but he also killed me with his own hands. Thinking of this, a huge current passed through Hugh's heart. He was in so much pain that he couldn't straighten his back. Then I remembered that on the night of our wedding, Hugh confessed his secret to me. He said that the system stipulated that he could only love Linda, but he had fallen in love with me at first sight. The system told him that every time he was attracted to me, he would receive an electric shock. As his feelings for me grew stronger, the electric shocks would gradually become more severe. When he married me, he had been shocked 999 times. Even so, after I said I do, he still thought it was worth it. Thinking of this, Hugh realized he hadn't felt an electric shock for a very, very long time. It turned out that he hadn't loved me for a long, long time. This electric shock was longer and more severe than ever before. After the electric shock passed, he slowly stood up. He said in a deep voice, Go back to the home country. Since he had taken everything of mine and given it to Linda, now he would take it all back from her. The system had been with Hugh for so long that it could read his mind. Just by looking at his expression, it knew what he was going to do. The system shouted anxiously, Host, no matter what you're going to do, you have to calm down. Evelyn is already dead, and Linda has become the female protagonist. This is already a settled situation. Your mission is also completed now. You won't die. You can stay in this world or go back to the real world. If you act impulsively, all of this might be ruined. No matter how much it shouted, Hugh only had one sentence. Shut up. The world without Evelyn didn't deserve to exist anymore. Linda was stunned for a few seconds when she saw Hugh through the peephole. Soon she turned around and ran upstairs. When she came down again, she was wearing very few clothes. After opening the door, Linda pretended to be unsteady and threw herself into his arms. Hugh, why are you here now? I called you many times, but you didn't reply to me. Linda looked up and finally noticed Hugh's gloomy expression. She trembled for no reason. Hugh, who made you unhappy? Before she could finish her words, a pair of big hands choked her neck. In an instant, Linda's face turned red. Hugh, what are you doing? Linda, what did you inject into Evelyn? Feeling his murderous gaze, Linda's whole body went stiff. She forced a stiff smile. It was the specific medicine. Is Sister Evelyn okay? You're lying. Hugh took out the recording. After playing it, a look of panic appeared in Linda's eyes. Everyone knew how crazy Hugh could be. Everyone also knew that I was his sore spot. Besides him, no one else was allowed to hurt me. Judging by Hugh's appearance, Linda knew that the matter had been exposed. Thinking of the way Hugh had treated her recently, she couldn't help but say, Hugh, I did all of this for you. That stupid Evelyn, if she knew you gave the specific medicine to me, she would definitely take revenge. Hugh narrowed his eyes and said word by word, Who asked you to do this? Linda summoned up her courage. I did it for your own good. Hugh, I'm in love with you. You've done so much for me. You must like me too. I just want to fight for my own happiness. What's wrong with that? His expression was one of disgust. Your mistake is that you laid a hand on Evelyn. He raised the syringe in his hand and stabbed it straight towards Linda's neck. You used this to make Evelyn unconscious. Right. For every bit of pain she suffered because of you. I will make you pay 1,000 times. Even 100 times more. His voice was sonorous and forceful. And Linda saw the word, devil, on his face. Only then did she regret it. She shouldn't have touched Evelyn. She shouldn't have provoked this man who was like a devil. Evelyn, wake up. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in a world of white light. A familiar voice came from above my head. I rubbed my eyes and remembered that I should be dead. I asked, is this heaven? This is my space. When I heard the voice again, I realized it was the voice of Hugh's system. I'm sorry. I summoned you here because something very urgent has happened in this world, and we need your help. The system briefly told me the latest situation. It said that after Hugh knew everything, he went to seek revenge on Linda. What I had experienced happened to Linda all over again. But this time, Hugh's methods were even more ruthless than when he dealt with me. Linda was tortured beyond recognition. If it were just about torturing Linda, that would be one thing. But Hugh also kidnapped the male protagonist of this world. He threatened the system that if I couldn't be brought back to life, he would kill both of them. This world relies on the male and female protagonists to maintain its balance. If the male and female protagonists are killed, this world will collapse. The system asked me to go and persuade Hugh. I didn't want to see him. Maybe this world is just a world of paper characters to Hugh. But to you, it's the real world. The system tried to persuade me earnestly. Your parents, your relatives and friends, your colleagues, they all really exist. Are you going to just stand by and watch them die? These words touched me. I didn't care about the lives or deaths of Linda and that man. But I couldn't let so many people be implicated. When I saw Hugh again, he seemed like a completely different person. His eyes were blood red, and his body was filled with a murderous intent. He held a cigarette between his fingers, and the rising smoke obscured most of his face. He sat in the dimly lit room, and outside, there were police officers shouting for him to release the hostages. Linda and a man were lying on the ground. Both of them were covered in blood and looked in a terrible state. I walked up to him and called out, Hugh. He finally looked at me. Just one look, and he seemed to come back to life. His whole body started shaking, and his hand involuntarily reached out. Evelyn, Evelyn, am I dreaming? I dodged his hand and reminded him. No, your system asked me to have a talk with you. His eyes lit up, and the next second, he pounced on me. It's you. It's really you. They really brought you back. He kissed my hair and was so excited that he could hardly stand. Evelyn, you're back. Have you forgiven me? I pushed him away. No. Just these two words made Hugh lose his mind again. He knelt down, and tears streamed down his face. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have treated you like that. Evelyn, please forgive me. Okay. I've already avenged you. As he repented, he tried to grab my hand. I shook his hand off again and looked into his eyes. Avenge me. Who was the one who really killed me? It was you. Hugh, how can you have the nerve to say you avenged me when you're still standing here safe and sound? The system reminded me. Evelyn, don't provoke him any further. I didn't respond to the system. No, I never meant to hurt you. Hugh frowned. I just want to be with you. I love you. Evelyn, I love you. As he spoke, the electric current pierced through Hugh's body again. Judging from his reaction, this electric current was stronger than ever before. Evelyn, it hurts so much. Hugh said to me, can you please hug me? Before, whenever he was shocked by the electric current, I would go up and hug him and soothe him softly. Hugh once said that I was his salvation. As long as I hugged him, his world would light up. Now, even though he was begging pitifully, I didn't even want to take a step forward. I even shook my head. I told him, Hugh, I don't think I can forgive you. Hugh's eyes widened, as if he had been struck on the head. Why? Why can't you give me a chance? I did all of this for you. If I didn't complete the mission, I couldn't stay here. Then let me ask you, were you really just trying to complete the mission? Did you really not have any feelings for Linda at all? I couldn't hold back my anger and asked him, since you knew Linda's plot, You could have just stopped her from going abroad or found another way to prevent this from happening. Why did you have to make me suffer in her place? Why did you give all my things to her one by one? Were you really just trying to complete your mission? Words can deceive, but actions can't. Hugh was such a smart person. How could he not have realized his own feelings? He knew and still did it. Just because he relied on the fact that I liked him and that I couldn't leave him. Hugh, I could forgive you before because I loved you. But now I don't love you anymore. I said each word with great pain. I'm afraid to love you now. Upon hearing these words, he looked as if he were dead. I'm sorry. I told him, Hugh, if you really feel sorry for me, stop doing these absurd things. I'm already dead once, and now I'm called out again to die because of you. Do you think this is fair to me? If you really feel sorry for me, then turn yourself in and let the law judge your mistakes. My words finally touched Hugh. He was silent for a long time, then slowly stood up and walked out of the room step by step. During this time, he looked back at me every 3 steps, and his eyes were filled with reluctance to part with me. When he opened the door, I heard Hugh say, Evelyn, I'll come to you soon. At first, I didn't understand the meaning behind these words, until I died again and the system woke me up once more. It told me that Hugh had committed suicide, and because I had prevented this world from being destroyed, the system chose to let me be reborn, and I was still the protagonist of this world. Linda would be punished by the law and had already been imprisoned. After hearing all of this, I thought for a long time and finally asked, now that Hugh is dead, did he go back to his own world? The system shook its head and told me, once you're dead, you're dead. He didn't go back to his own world, and there was no trace of him left in this world either. Before he died, he kept calling my name. He thought that if he died, he could be with me, but he didn't know that I had been brought back to life. Even though I was resurrected, I couldn't live with my original identity. I changed my appearance and identity and had new friends and family. Even so, I still held a heart of gratitude. After all, I was still alive. As long as I'm alive, that's enough. A few years later, I returned to my old profession. I continued to shine in the medical field. Of course, I also met my old friends again. Every time we had a meal, they would tell me, you're very much like my old friend, but she's dead. I would just smile when I heard that. It doesn't matter. You can think of me as her. Everything was as wonderful as it used to be. The end.